Sometimes the most powerful political statement that a comic book character can make is through his or her absence. On March the 8th, 2007, fans of Captain America, the long-running series that for years had been a symbol of American pride, American liberty, American equality. On that morning, fans of Captain America were stunned to wake up and find that in the issue that just released, that Captain America had been assassinated. A great deal of consternation followed that announcement, that realization. There were plenty of fans who thought it had been handled poorly. The publisher admitted they'd spent about 18 months talking about it and deciding what they were going to do. Captain America's assassination seemed to have been, and most people took it, as an indication of the decline of America. So we'll take a moment to talk about this theme as it runs through comics. That is, this idea that America is in decline, and that's been especially true for the last 20 or 30 years. So once again, Captain America had been a symbol of the best of America, sometimes even more than Superman. But as the comics proceeded, Captain America became increasingly concerned, disturbed by the behavior of American military forces and the direction of American foreign policy. So in one issue, Captain America visited Guantanamo Bay, and he became so disgusted at what he saw that he took the commanding general and threw him 300 yards. We don't know for sure that he survived, but it was an act of outrage and disgust at what the creators of Captain America saw was going on, especially after the invasion of Iraq. That seems to be the watershed mark at which a lot of folks just started to become upset about the trajectory they saw America was taking. So how do we define the decline of America? Is America in decline? I mean, to be sure, this sort of thing is explored not only in graphic novels, but in the press, in the academic press. So how might we define it? How can we ascertain if this is really a phenomenon? And if it is, it seems to have importance not only for the United States, but for the rest of the world, giving the U.S.'s influence. Liberals might define the decline of America, following what we've just said, in terms of over-aggression in our foreign policy on the part of our military, trying to manipulate other regimes in ways that, whatever the motives might be, but in ways that don't seem to work very well and seem to impose on the sovereignty of those other countries. Another indication of American decline, at least from the liberal point of view, would be a perception of a growing authoritarianism on the part of American leaders. And once again, this was applied to George W. Bush after the invasion of Iraq, and for sure, for at least a year leading up to the invasion of Iraq, when protests were taking place all over the world, trying to stop that invasion. What might be another part of the definition from a liberal point of view? Economic degradation. So from time to time we find comic book characters who are taking a concern for the environment. And in one particular episode, Superman is faced with a dilemma of sorts, an ethical dilemma about the environment, whether to allow particular industrial activity to go on, even though there will be in some measure a sacrifice to the environment. He concludes with a sort of a balance, a compromise, but a lot of leaders saw that and thought that he'd made the wrong choice, especially given his symbolic role in the U.S. And going back to a theme that we raised earlier, if there is anything to this idea of mythology in American comics, then we probably are going to find it with Superman, right? I mean, there's no one who is more iconic and represents more in American culture. Now, from the conservative point of view, how might the decline of America be defined? Well, for conservatives, it would be a worry about the deterioration of American influence around the world. It would be a deterioration of leadership, a weakening of leadership, rather than a concern for growing authoritarianism. And for sure, conservatives could draw on the heritage of the American Constitutional Convention and the Federalist Papers, especially those papers that deal with an argument that a stronger government is needed to overcome the disorder that America was experiencing under the Articles of Confederation and the potential and the threat of even greater chaos. Americans also, from the conservative point of view, might define the decline of America in terms of a loosening of cultural mores, a loosening of cultural values, especially when it comes to matters of sexual expression and sexual practice. However, since 9/11, but especially since the invasion of Iraq and the months leading up to that, those from the left have tended to dominate the comic and graphic novel press. So it is their concern, it's their definition of American decline that is most evident in comics and in graphic novels. But we'll offer just one other example, and that would be a graphic novel entitled The Pride of Baghdad. The Pride of Baghdad, written by Brian K. Vaughan, who has quite a reputation for quality work in comics and in graphic novels. And Vaughan, in this particular graphic novel, which by the way has no writing at all, it's a very interesting artistic exploration. The Pride of Baghdad refers to a fictional, but perhaps not so fictional, zoo in Baghdad that was in part destroyed during the invasion of Iraq. Animals escape, but the difficulty is those animals don't know what to do with themselves, having experienced that level of freedom and experiencing a complete disappearance of authority so quickly. So what actually begins to happen for those animals that survive is a kind of a deterioration in their social relations and a deterioration in the social order by which they interrelate one to the other. So I don't think the analogy is too difficult to draw, and we should acknowledge that this is very artfully constructed. The art in this is very artfully constructed. A great deal of talent went into this, especially since, again, there's no script, there's no writing. So the analogy, of course, is to the Iraqi people themselves, and that is their apparent inability to experience and to take advantage of the unexpected and instant freedom that they experienced, freedom of a sort, but disorder as well, after the invasion of Iraq, and given the displacement of the leadership in Iraq of Saddam Hussein. So this is a pretty powerful commentary and one other indication of this theme that we're seeing run through this industry, and that is a portrayal, a sad portrayal, a kind of a lament that America is no longer the country that it used to be.